Welcome everyone. My name is Kylie Wagner and I'm the director for the Farmland program at Kiss the Ground. And joining me today, we have Jessie Smith, Kiss the Ground's farmer mentor and regen ag consultant. And she should be popping on shortly, but we also have Jessica Chiardis, who's our soil scientist here for the Farmland program. A few quick Zoom etiquette. I'm sure you're all familiar with Zoom, but please keep yourself muted during the presentation. There will be an opportunity for questions at the end. You can just type in the chat box during the presentation if any questions come up. And you can move to speaker view in the top right corner of the screen. Just click the view button. But Leah, our speaker today from OpenTEAM, will be presenting, so you might not have to worry with that. All right, well, without further ado, I'll let Jessie speak a little bit about FarmOS and how we use that in the Farmland program, and then I'll introduce our main speaker for today, Leah.
Yeah, thank you so much, Kylie, and welcome all for joining us today. Thank you so much, Leah, for making the time to present about this very exciting new work that you're engaged in. For those that aren't familiar with the Farmland program, we have a platform where we supply funding for farmer education and training, as well as the scientific research that creates a baseline understanding for the ecological function of their soils on their property. And when we first started this program, we knew we were going to, over time, be aggregating a lot of different data points and would need a repository in order to store that data, as well as a way for us to access it, disseminate some sort of insight and information around it that we could then communicate out to a wider audience. We're looking for something that was open source, so that we could make sure we could share the platform with farmers. It was accessible both from a cost perspective, as well as interoperable with a lot of the new and emerging technology for different monitoring on their landscape. So through this process, we were really led to find the OpenTEAM and their FarmOS platform, and we wanted to make sure that our broader community had a deeper insight as to the powerful asset that it is and all that it can do, as well as how it's nested within a larger initiative that is the OpenTEAM network. And so, yeah, without further ado, I will pass it over to Leah.
Great, thank you. I'm having internet issues today, so I'm going to turn my video off, just letting you know. Also, there's sanding in the room next to me, so if the noise gets really loud, please just like wave your hands at me and I'll try to figure out something else.
Well, you're doing good right now. You're loud and clear. Thank you.
All right. Well, I'm super stoked to be talking with all of you today about OpenTEAM and one of the tech tools in our tech ecosystem, FarmOS. So I'm Leah, as Jessie and Kylie mentioned. I'm the Agricultural Research Coordinator at Wolfsneck Center and with OpenTEAM. So at Wolfsneck Center, I run the on-site research trials and engage with a lot of these technologies. And then with OpenTEAM, I coordinate our field methods working group and provide assistance to other farms and organizations in the OpenTEAM network with tech tools and soil sampling. So today I'm going to go over a little bit about OpenTEAM generally, and then we can dive into the uses of FarmOS, and I'll do a little demo for you guys as well at the end, just to give you a taste of what FarmOS is all about. We're just going to do pretty basic stuff in FarmOS, but I can follow up with Jessie and Kylie with a bunch of resources and other tutorials that you can all check out. All right, so I will start sharing my screen if that works for you all. There we go. Great. Can you guys see that? Yep.
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 Great. All right. All right, so who we are. So OpenTEAM, or Open Technology Ecosystem for Agricultural Management, is a farmer-driven interoperable platform built to support farmers around the world with the best possible knowledge to improve soil health. The OpenTEAM community is a collaborative community of farmers, scientists, and researchers, farm service providers, and food companies that are committed to building open source tools to overcome the challenges most farmers face when it comes to adaptive soil health management. So here's just a bunch of our partners that you can see here. So what we do at OpenTEAM. So we're creating a technological ecosystem and social community to support data interoperability for better soil health insights for farmers, ranchers, researchers, food companies, and other stakeholders. We offer field level carbon measurement, digital management records, remote sensing, predictive analytics, and input and economic management decision support in a connected platform that reduces the need for manual data entry and helps improve access to a wide array of tools. We support adaptive soil health management for farms of all scales, geographies, and production systems across the country and globally soon, and are working to accelerate scientific understanding of soil health by providing more high quality data to researchers collaborating on our project and beyond. There are many different ag tech and ag softwares out there, but most of them don't connect, which is symbolized by this non-connecting series of dots. But the goal of OpenTEAM is to create an ecosystem of tech tools for farmers in which data can flow through an entire ecosystem, making it so farmers only have to enter data once and can use that data in multiple ways to serve their various needs. So you might be asking yourself, what is a technology ecosystem? The technology ecosystem is a complex network or interconnected system. Just as a natural ecosystem, it's a community of organisms which is a community of organisms that are linked through nutrient flows. A tech ecosystem is a community of tools and technologies that are linked through data flows. And so Jesse mentioned that FarmOS is open source. And what is open source? Open source is a publicly accessible software design that can be modified and shared by multiple users. So this allows source code, the code behind the software, to be inspected and enhanced by anyone. Because open source utilizes multiple collaborators, it allows for more control, increased security and stability, additional training opportunities, and control over your own data. And then the last piece of OpenTEAM is data operability. So what is data interoperability? Interoperability is a characteristic of a product or system whose interfaces are completely understood to work with other products or systems, now or in the future, in implementation or access and without any restrictions. So this interoperability allows data to flow from one software to another on the back end without having to re-enter any data. OpenTEAM engages a diversity of developers, organizations, and farmer groups who share a common belief in openness, sharing, and collaboration. The ecosystem includes remote sensing technologies like Optis and OpenLandMap, agro-ecosystem models like PNTC, Comet Farm, Cool Farm Tools, and Field to Market, decision tools like different grazing tools and cover crop tools, LandPKS and RSI, adaptive management frameworks, and then lastly, observational tools, which is what we'll be focusing on today, which is FarmOS, SurveyStack, LandPKS, Quick Carbon, and LightFarm. So the goal of the interoperability would allow farmers to enter their data into one of these tools, and it could flow into one of the other tools depending on the needs of the farmer. So this ecosystem is already assembled and ready to go. The key technology components of the complete ecosystem are already represented within the OpenTEAM group and can be added to as our community of practice evolves and expands. Once the system is functioning, the same system can be used to support many protocols and test new tools and technologies. These tools and technologies are already being tested by our OpenTEAM network of farms and organizations, which are called hubs. The hubs form the basis of the global network of farms, ranches, and supply chains to guide and quantify ecosystem service improvements and links between soil health, food quality, human health, and ag management. So through this network of technology providers, farms, ranchers, universities, and food networks, and government agencies, we are working towards a shared technology commons for data intake and management, making access to technology and agricultural data more accessible to growers. OpenTEAM assists growers to get onboarded and set up with the tools. The individual farmer or rancher has complete control and ownership over their data. And through the process of farmer and rancher permissions, that data can be shared with the other tech tools in the ecosystem, depending on those individual goals. How we work at OpenTEAM. The OpenTEAM community has 5 different working groups to achieve these goals of interoperability with the tech tools. So the first one is our technology working group, and this one has sort of been our primary focus for year 1 of the project. We're now in year 2. So the technology team identifies opportunities for co-development, prioritizing work packages, and supports interoperability of their technologies. Our second group is our field methods working group, and this group works to bridge the science with the available tools to create a versioned and tiered approach that will support the needs of farmers, ranchers, researchers, and markets. So right now we're currently working on a research question and protocol library and decision tool that will help farmers and ranchers choose in-field soil health assessments that fit their research or monitoring needs, and allow for standardized collection of that data so we can start to aggregate that data. Our third group is our hub and network working group. And this group grounds and coordinates the other working groups across scales, geographies, production systems through farmer, rancher, researcher, and market networks. And this is all of the farms and organizations across the country that are testing out the tools for us as well and providing feedback. Our fourth group is the Systems Center Design Working Group, and that's focused on creating internal and external social feedback and design processes for the OpenTEAM community and for those tools themselves. And then our last group, which is our newest addition, is our Racial Equity and Inclusion Working Group, which works to amplify the work of our members and support collaborative efforts towards racial equity and inclusion through OpenTEAM community members. And here we're just demonstrating that we operate across scales, geographies, and production systems in the US and beyond, and some examples of those different types of organizations that we work with. And some of the shared benefits of OpenTEAM and some of the goals that we're working towards. We're working towards a shared ag tech toolkit for farmers, field technicians, agronomists, and others, to rapid and low cost in-field assessment toolkit, 3, greater farmer control over their data, 4, data portability to value-added incentives, including certification, conservation payments, ecosystem service credits, 5, peer-to-peer learning based on affinities, and 6, a way to measure conservation practice effectiveness. So that's a little bit of a background of OpenTEAM in general. I'm going to talk a little bit about 3 of our main tech tools that have been in the OpenTEAM ecosystem since the formation of OpenTEAM before going into FarmOS in more detail. So those 3 tools are LandPKS, SurveyStack, and FarmOS. So we'll start with LandPKS, which stands for Land Potential Knowledge System. And it's a free modular mobile phone app connected to a cloud-based storage, global database, and models for storing, accessing, and sharing data. It follows the NRCS in-field soil health assessment to provide farmers with observational tools that they need to assess the health of their soils and plants in the field without sending any samples off for analysis. And then they can decide, farmers and users can decide how much of that data that they share. But it's pretty neat. If you do go to the LandPKS website, you can click on the network button and it'll show a map, and it has a bunch of little red dots showing everyone who has used LandPKS and made their data public, and you can check out what their different soils are. Our next tool is SurveyStack, And SurveyStack is a collaborative research platform to create surveys. Imagine a Google form. It's similar to that. Collect data, report, and share filters. Users collect data using an Android app and a Bluetooth or USB connection, and you can attach measurement data from different instruments. So OpenTEAM this year is developing our research question and protocol library in SurveyStack for the 2021 field season. That anybody could log in, and it would walk you through a research protocol for in-field soil health assessments. And this next one, Quick Carbon, is an example of an implementation of SurveyStack. So this device can link up to SurveyStack, and its mission is a rapid landscape scale soil carbon assessment to make science accessible for land managers for ecological understanding, decision making, and markets. And Quick Carbon uses spectroscopy to estimate soil carbon, and it's still in its testing phase and calibration phase. So several OpenTEAM hub farms and ranches have agreed to contribute to this calibration process for the 2021 field season, which means they'll be collecting samples and analyzing them with this little spectrometer, but also sending samples off for analysis for total carbon as well. And that brings us to, FarmOS. So FarmOS is a web-based application for farm management, planning, and record keeping, developed by a community of farmers, developers, researchers, and organizations. The Field Kit is an offline mobile app that connects to FarmOS in the field as well. So you may have used similar tools to FarmOS, Tend, FarmBox, PastureMap perhaps, but FarmOS is set apart from these other ag management softwares because it is an open source project and community. So the code is all open and transparent, and anyone can contribute to new features within the software, making it very flexible and constantly evolving to fit the needs of the user. Anyone can download this and use it for free if you host it for yourself. Alternatively, you can pay a minimal hosting fee and they will host it through FarmOS for you. So we'll go a little bit into some of the goals, high-level goals of FarmOS in general, and then we'll jump into our demo. So some of the goals of FarmOS is, first one is that you can collect anything. So you can collect data on your activities and observations on your farm or ranch, your inputs and harvests, maps and locations. You can add in weather and sensor data to it. And this can be done at any scale, from somebody's backyard to a 7,000 acre ranch. You can also easily find and manage records. So you can search your records by type, you can link different records together, you can categorize and flag records, filter and sort them, and then export data easily so that you can manipulate your data pretty easily within FarmOS itself. You can do this from anywhere, so you can connect it to a desktop, a laptop, a phone, and a tablet. And then there's also the iOS and Android app, the Field Kit, which is offline. And then once you get back to internet, it'll upload everything to your FarmOS instance. Users own all of their own data. So it's all of the data in there is private by default. And there's fine-grained permissions that the farmer can decide what and how much that they share with either other tech tools or other people in their system. And there's lots of different options for sharing that data out. And then it's a global community, so it's free and open source. Anyone can contribute to it. There's multilingual support, and it's in metric and imperial units. The platform is for farmers, researchers, and service providers. It's very flexible. And because it is a platform, you can add in different modules to fit your needs of your farm or ranch. So for example, there's a crop planning module or grazing planning modules, or there's a beekeeping module. So just depending on what you need, you can take those little modules in and out. So I just wanted to back up a little bit and mention that I placed FarmOS in the context of these other tech tools to demonstrate that FarmOS is just one tool in this ecosystem of tech tools, and that the interoperability is underway. So a good example of this is if I'm using Quick Carbon, this data is collected through a survey stack form. So the survey stack form will walk me through the points that I should go to, ask me a few questions about it, and walk me through the protocol itself for collecting the soil and drying it and measuring it. And it's then geotagged, and all of that data is sent directly into the FarmOS account, where that data can be stored with your management data. So using this ecosystem of tech tools, the user can start to overlay all of these different data types and get sort of this 3D, fuller, more robust picture of your landscape and of your management practices and how those things interact. So with that, I think we'll go into our demo. I'm going to stop sharing for a minute so I can get situated here.
Yeah, there's a question about if
great.
there's a cost or a fee associated with this program.
Yeah, so there's it's totally free, but if you host it yourself, but if you want to have FarmOS to host it, I believe it's $75 a year to have them host it for you. But it doesn't cost anything else. Are there any other questions before I jump in? Actually, I see the chat.
One more question about carbon reporting. Does FarmOS collect this data, and is it a percentage?
So for the quick carbon tool, if that's what you're talking about, Hillary, right now it's just a spectral, it spits out like a spectral analysis, and then that has to go to the lab and be calibrated, and then that will give you a carbon percentage. However, because it's still in like calibration and testing mode, that's not as seamless as it will be eventually. So like the idea is that eventually the spectrometer will take the color of the soil sample and be able to give you a percentage of carbon, but we're just not there yet. So we're still in our calibration phase. Okay. I will share again.
Leah sets up the demo of FarmOS. If anybody has any other questions, feel free to add them into the chat.
And Kylie, you can just stop me too, because I'm not monitoring the chat, so just stop me if something comes up too.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, cool. Okay, so, you know what? I wanted to go over the assets and the areas, but we can do that now. So we have four different data types for FarmOS. So we have areas, assets, logs, and people. So your areas are the location, and your areas can be fields, buildings, structures, just any place on your farm can be an area. And then here you have your assets. And an asset is the what. So it's your crops, it's your animals, it can be your equipment and your sensors. And then you have your logs, which is the when. And these are all the activities that you're doing on your farm. So when you're seeding, you can do, or observations, harvest, just depending on what you want to put in there. And then you have your people, and you could have as many people as you want, or as many people work on your farm, can each have their own account, and they can each have their own role within that. So there's three different role types within FarmOS. There's farm worker, farm manager, and farm viewer down here. Farm manager has the most permissions. Farm worker is pretty close. So for farm workers and farm managers, you can delete, add, change records. You can totally manipulate everything. And as a farm viewer, you can only view. So that could be some sort of technical service provider or consultant or something that you maybe don't want to have total control over your FarmOS account, but you want them to be able to see what you're doing. And then we have plans, and we have crop plans and grazing plans right now. So there's two different tutorials that exist within the OpenTEAM community on these two different grazing plans and crop plans, so I won't go into that now, but I can send that your way if for anybody who is interested in that. So we're going to go back to our dashboard here. And so this is what pops up when you first sign into FarmOS. And I think for our little demo, we're just going to go through how to add a whole record. So we'll start with adding an area, we'll add a planting, and then we can see where all of that data goes. So if we want to add an area, you go to this little box right here, add an area. And you can choose the type of area that you're adding. So bed, building, greenhouse, paddock, field, landmark, water. You can add water lines or a pump, property or other. And so we'll say this is a field. And you can put a flag on it. So I'm going to put a priority flag on it just so I remember to delete this later. And we're going to call it field 1. And then here, this map pops up, and there's all of these different things you can do. And I'm not going to go into all the detail there, but there's tutorials on that as well. And I'm going to draw a polygon, but first I'm going to zoom into my field. And so here you can see all of the fields that we already have. So I'll pick a place we don't have in here. And I'll draw my little polygon here. And it tells me that it's 3.39 acres. And then you can go in here and add a description. So let's say I'm going to say field for FarmOS. And you can attach any files that would be relevant. And any relations if it's related to another place. And so we'll save that. And now when we zoom in here, we should see our field 1 right here. And when you click on it, it'll say field 1, it'll put that priority tag on there, and it'll tell you your notes. And if so, say if we click on this field, it'll also have a link to the associated logs that you have with it. So since we have no logs here, we have nothing associated with it, but that will change in a moment. So then the best way to add anything to your fields is to go to this quick form right here. And in this quick form area, the quick forms are just common tasks in FarmOS. So you can use this to create multiple records at the same time. So these headers right here can change depending on your priorities. So if you click this configure button, you can check or uncheck some of these. So say we don't have laying hens anymore. So I'll unclick that, save configuration, and now that's eggs is no longer on this bar right here. So then if we go back to quick forms, we're going to go to planting. And it's going to be for the 2021 field season. We're going to say it's 1 crop, but you can put in up to 15 different crop varieties in here. And that could be used for a cover crop mix or pasture mix or something like that. But for our purposes, we're going to plant 3 acres of arugula, because why not? And so a planting is an asset, so that's an actual thing, and a seeding is an event, is one of those logs. So if we wanted to say we're going to seed this in a greenhouse first, and then we're going to plant it, we're going to transplant it out, which I know you typically don't do for arugula, but just bear with me. So we'll say that we seeded it on January 6th, and we seeded it at Wish Camper, which is one of our barns. And you can add in quantity here. You can put in a value and then units, but we're not going to do that for right now. And then you can click this completed mark because we know that we did that on January 6th. Now we're going to add a transplant because we know the date that we're going to transplant it. So we decide, okay, we're going to transplant probably in March, let's say March 6th, so it's exactly 2 months. And we are going to transplant it into our field 1. And as you start to type, it'll populate the field for you. We're going to leave quantity and notes empty, and we're not going to put completed because we haven't done it yet. And then you can also add in a harvest, and you could add in a harvest that you think. So let's say we're going to harvest in April. We'll do April 6th. Why not? And that's not going to be completed either. And you can go back in and edit any of these logs afterwards if that doesn't end up happening the way that you've planned. And so now it created this asset name for you, 2021 Field 1 Arugula, because it's telling you where it's going to be and what it is and the season. And you can change the name if that doesn't really work for you. But for our purposes here, we will create that planting. And so you can see here the things that it created. It created this planting, so that's your asset, the 2021 Field 1 Arugula. It created 3 different logs associated with this asset. And that's that seeding, the transplanting event, and then the harvesting event. And so now, if we want to go find these things, we can find them in a few different ways. We could go to areas and go to our Field 1. And our transplanting shows up. But that doesn't have our seeding because our seeding was at Wishcamper. So if you wanted to find everything associated with that planting itself, you would go to Assets, Plantings, and you can go into Filters here, and you can search Arugula and apply. And then there's our log right there. There's our planting. And then if we wanted to see the seeding or the transplant, we can go into here. It's the most recent one, so it's on top. So there's our seeding in Wishcamper. And then you could go to our transplant. And it's going to be that first one again. And it'll show you where it is. But see how it says that this item is not done. So then you can go to edit here. So now say it's done, we transplanted. You go into here, you can mark this log as done and then resave, and it'll be done from there. And so then if you wanted to see, so say now it's the end of the year, it's November, and we want an understanding of everything that we planted for the entire year. We could go to our logs and go to our, actually, I think the best way to do this would be go to our assets and our plantings. And we want to know everything that we did in 2020. So we can apply that. And this will show all of the planting assets for 2020. And if you scroll all the way down to the bottom, you can export this as a CSV. Open that up. Oops, wrong screen. And it'll have that all in spreadsheet form for you. So I see that there's some questions, so I'm going to look at that.
Yeah, we have about 3 questions.
Okay.
Ty is wondering if the system has the ability to pull GIS shapefiles from USDA systems or ArcGIS.
Yeah, so you can input, here, let me show you that. If you go to here and go to areas, you can do area importer. And that's a way that you can input an entire KML file. So that's what we did for all of our fields too. These were all drawn in Google Maps, and then we imported them into FarmOS. And along with the areas function, you can also do a bed generator, which is pretty sweet. So if we have a field that we know we want to turn into beds, like this field perhaps, you can tell it what orientation you want the beds to be and how many beds you want, and if you want them the same size, and it'll automatically generate those beds for you at the width that makes sense with the space that you have available.
Great, thanks, Leah. And then Molly is wondering how the carbon emissions will be calculated. I think she might have missed your answer to this question, but she's asking if it's based on the hand-keyed inputs, or is there a satellite or drone technology reading what the field area is putting out?
For carbon emissions? Oh, for the quick carbon?
I think so.
So that is going to be the calibration for that will be actual soil samples that will be sent to the lab, and what the quick carbon is measuring is just the color of that soil sample. So it's a little handheld. It's that little handheld device here. I'll pull it back up. It's this little guy right here, and underneath this are a series of lights that then measure the reflectance coming off the soil sample. And so that's what they're working on calibrating now to make sure that reflectance is actually representing the amount of carbon in there. Does that answer your question?
She said, thank you.
Great.
Thank you for your presentation, Leah. Does anyone have any further questions that we can help answer?
I have one more thing I can show you too. So that was very crop heavy, but then there's also this nifty tool that they started this year through the quick forms as well, where you can move your animals really easily. So for us, like we're dairy operations, to say we're going to move our animals. So you go to that, let me go back. You go to that same quick forms here, and to the move animal section, and we're saying we moved them, let's say this morning at 8 after milking. You can type your group of animals and what field they're going to be moving to. And then here you can choose your geometry right on here. So it'll show me the field. This is the Brocklebank 1 field that I selected. And then you can choose, if you're doing subdivisions in a paddock, you can draw your subdivision right on there and then save it and add observations to it. So you can add in, utilization rate, like crop height before, crop height after, and stuff like that. So you can keep track of that over time as well. And then all of that will be saved to that specific geometry. So if you go back year after year, or even rotation after rotation, as your geometry changes, that number will still be associated with that specific location that you found it at. Can you add other data to each field? Yes, such as fertilizer applications and dates. Yes, you can. So logs here, you can do inputs. And you can add in soil amendments, herbicide, pesticides. You can add in anything that you would want. And you can do, I think you can do that in a quick form as well. Maybe not. Yeah, soil amendment. And then you do the same thing, the date, the measurement type, area size, the amendment name, compost, or whatever. And that's another thing too, that using the quick form function, you can plan all of that stuff ahead of time if you want, and then you can assign it to different people on your farm, and then they can check mark done when they've completed the task. So it also can be a good tool for managing your staff as well.
If anyone has any other questions, can I share your email, or what's the best way for them to get in touch?
Absolutely, yeah, share my email address. And I can send up a follow-up with a bunch of other tutorials too, just to get you all on your way a little bit as well.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, this is Jesse here. I just wanted to add, we obviously are using this as a repository for soil health data for Kiss the Ground. Also, in my farming side of my work, we use this a lot to meet certifications. So whether it be kind of the monitoring of compost turning, or the application of certain soil amendments, you can export those CSV documents and then upload those directly to whatever your certification body portal might be. And that's been really helpful in kind of cutting out kind of double accounting. Another one that we found was really valuable is the nesting or relationship feature of different assets. And I put this in the chat, but in case other people didn't see this, if you have a certain piece of equipment or a tool set, you can assign it to a building or an equipment yard or something like that, so you know where it belongs. But then also you can track its movement. If someone left a tractor out in a field in the job and another member of the team needs to know where that is, you can go back and look at previous movements of assets throughout a property, or where a tool or a piece of equipment currently resides. And I think that that's really valuable. And one more thing, Leah, that maybe you can touch upon is its receptivity to remote monitoring. So if you were to put up a weather station or a soil moisture probe or something like that, obviously it would require some more kind of, I don't know if you would call it programming, but I think that that's an important thing to touch upon.
Yeah, absolutely. So in your top toolbar here, there's under assets, there's a sensors portion of that. And so here we have a weather station over here. And then over here, there's some monitoring tools for our greenhouses. And you can add your sensors in here, name them, and then you configure them to work with FarmOS, and it'll track everything directly on here. Ours are offline just because it's winter, so we don't have too much data on here to show you, but it's very simple to do that as well. So if you had soil moisture or wind or anything, you can put that directly into FarmOS and it'll track it for you.
Thank you for that. Appreciate it.
Yeah, of course.
All right, well, if we don't have any more questions, we'll let you guys go. Thank you, Leah and Jesse, for helping facilitate. And I dropped Leah's email in the chat if anybody has any follow-up questions. I guess one more question from Glenn. Is this available and applicable in countries outside of the US?
I actually don't know that. Do you, Jesse? I'd assume
Are you
so.
talking about the actual platform, whether it's available outside the US?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think that there's any geographic restrictions on the platform. I think this also ties into a question that was previously asked around what is the most up-to-date base map imagery. I think that's going to vary region by region and country by country, but I don't know the answer. I just assume that it's not restricted.
Yeah, and to address that too, just for all of you, there's these little map layers here too. If you go to your areas and click on the little thing that looks like layers, and you can turn on and off general areas that you've entered into the farm, but also there's a base layer section, and there's different types of base maps. So sometimes if you toggle between the Google satellite and the Mapbox satellite, one is a little bit more updated than the other. So that's just something to be aware of as well.
Awesome.
Yeah, and feel
Great.
free to reach out with any questions for sure.
Great. Thank you so much for the presentation, and we would love to continue to provide resources associated not only with FarmOS, but also with the whole OpenTEAM community. So for any of the listeners or audience here, as Kylie and I mentioned, please feel free to reach out to us or engage through one of our social media channels, as well as our community platform that Kylie can also maybe provide a little bit more information around, where we engage with within discussions, not only on technology, but also in the context of different practices and different kind of research initiatives, as well as different granting opportunities for some of these innovative ag practices. So yeah, thank you all for taking the time out of your day to join us here.
All right. Have a nice day, everyone.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Leah.